This episode is made possible by NetSuite by Oracle and Brex, the AI-powered spend platform.
Hi, it's Betsy Ward. I'm the CFO of MassMutual, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 969.
I mentioned our finance transformation, so I am super excited about us continuing on that path and getting us close to a place in the next 12 months where we can really start to develop and deliver the value from that. We can take finance to a place that I think the organization hasn't seen before in terms of how much we can contribute to the business. So we are both becoming more efficient, and we're also investing in the business in some of the areas that I talked about before. So I think you'll see us really move along the path on that customer-centric organization and on that, delivering data and technology solutions to our customers.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Elizabeth Mann, CFO of Verisk. Elizabeth Mann began her career in academia as a mathematician, where she would spend a decade in the field. Her initial plan was to become a professor, a path that started with a PhD and postdoctorate. However, something was missing. Eager to engage more directly with the world at large, she pivoted her career towards finance. She found a door of entry at Goldman Sachs, where initially she stepped into a quantitative role involving complex financing structures, but soon transitioned into investment banking, where she became focused on M&A and corporate finance in tech and media companies. There was no turning back. As you'll hear in today's episode, Mann landed with both feet firmly planted on the CFO path. We'll begin after this. CFOs and controllers, does expense management feel like a necessary evil? It's time to switch to Brex. Brex automates and accelerates spend management with easy-to-use corporate cards, travel, expense management, and bill pay, all on one AI-powered platform. Brex makes it easy to boost efficiency and compliance enterprise-wide and free up your managers, employees, and accounting team for higher impact work. Top companies from startups to enterprises are using Brex to automate manual work and transform their finance operations. We're talking DoorDash, Robinhood, Airtable, and countless other industry leaders. Ready to join them? Switch to AI-powered spend management at Brex.com. Hello, we're speaking with Elizabeth Mann, CFO of Verisk. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thanks a bunch, Jack. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Please take a look back for us. As we always do, we begin. And what we want is just a few of those experiences you feel prepared you for this CFO role. What would come to mind?
Yeah, it's a good question. So my career, I've had a meandering career, I think it's fair to say, and it's really had three separate phases along the way. And I would say that I got something out of each of those phases that really prepared me for the CFO role. I started my career in something nothing to do with finance or even the private sector or business world at all. I was an academic. I was a mathematician for the first 10 years of my working life. And I thought I was going to be a professor for the rest of my life after doing a PhD and then a postdoc. Now, ultimately, I decided that I wanted things to work on things that were more engaged with the real world. And I made a change. But I think those years were not wasted. People often ask me, you were a mathematician, so you must use that technical math in your finance days. And on the one hand, the answer is no, not really. I don't really use that very detailed academic mathematics. But I think I learned a lot about rigor, about how to think about things in a clear way and in an independent way and coming up with your own views and perspective. and really pursuing an idea to its logical conclusion. And that has been useful in everything that came since. I think, the second phase after leaving mathematics, I became an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, covering M&A and corporate finance in the tech and media sectors. And
given your unique background, Elizabeth, what door of entry did you come through at Goldman Sachs? I mean, was it just given your background, it was a little unusual, I think. Not that they couldn't use your skills or mind, but what door of entry were you?
Good question. When I first started, I was in a quantitative role, still on the private side, but I was helping issuers structure deals for financings for in sort of the esoteric financing space, including film slate financings and aviation aircraft backed financing in the aviation space and things like that. So it was a hybrid technical / advisory role, but I came to really enjoy the advisory side and to realize that was the important part of it. So after a year or two at Goldman, I ended up switching to the classic investment banking track, which didn't officially use any of my kind of technical background.
Yeah, but you come aboard sort of as this quantitative expert or mind, and you begin observing the people around you, and wow, that's interesting. Let me see how I can fit into that space. Yes,
exactly.
Something similar.
Exactly like that. Exactly. And I look, I worked really hard, but I started to understand deals and how to do deals. I had to work on some first, and then I had to lead them. I learned about kind of capital markets and how they work and what investors are looking for, debt investors, equity investors, worked on, hundreds of presentations for investors and learned that mindset. So it was really all about how to evaluate a company from the outside in. What are the shareholders and investors looking for? What's good? What's not seen as good?
And you arrived there really in the financial crisis, and I want to tip your hand a little bit. You spent 12 years there. That's quite an investment of career years. But you came in during the rather dark period, I would imagine.
Yes, that's right. I came in, just before the downturn. So I started there in 2007, and so really got to see the full roller coaster, and the adaptability. I think one of the lessons, the adaptability of the capital markets and how the deals are structured one way in a certain era, and then when markets change and priorities change in terms of investors and parameters change, the deals that can get done change as well. And that's obviously been an interesting lesson as we go back to a interest rate environment.
When we have someone like yourself who spent that many years at Goldman Sachs, we're always trying to get a better sense of the culture there. There's a lot of intrigue around it. We know it's awful long hours and weekends. Tell us something that maybe we're not aware of about it.
Yeah, I think it was and remains a great place of people who are really capable and that are kind of on their A game every day. So they're motivated by really doing an outstanding job, and they're really motivated by the clients, I think. And so it is a very tight place, and that dedication of people means that they will answer you. If you call someone up that you don't know and you say, I've got this question from a client, they will go out of their way to help you just because they know that's part of the culture of the place, and they'll be calling somebody up the next week.
Was it hard to find mentors there? Did you find them over time, or was it a different influence?
I had great mentors there, and it evolved. Mm-hmm. It evolved over the years as the place grows. And there was great internal mobility. Like I mentioned, I started in a more technical and quantitative group. I went into the classic banking group. I eventually went into the strategy group for Goldman Sachs. So there's kind of moving around, and at each of those steps, I had good mentors.
The strategy group. When you say that, we're like, oh, okay, they changed the portfolio. Help us understand better what were some of the things you explored there and help execute.
Yeah, so it was interesting because it was all of a sudden it was starting to think about Goldman as as a business, and what kinds of things they should or shouldn't be doing. Look, the most visible from the outside of those strategic changes was their investment in some of the consumer-facing businesses, which they have since started to unwind.
You're speaking of the Apple relationship or something like that?
That's right. I wasn't really as directly involved on those. I don't have any particular comments on those other than to say it was, kind of unfortunate timing with what was going on in the macro environment. So that was a visible shift. But other things that they looked at were how can they fundamentally get more involved in more steady fee-based businesses as opposed to more volatile banking and capital markets businesses.
Did you feel like a consultant at time? Like a strategy consultant almost? Or did you work closely with strategy consultants? Or no?
The difference between what we were doing and what a strategy consultant might do is is how that we were doing it from the inside, and we were doing it with a lot of partnership from the businesses. So it was more of the inside look as opposed to the outside in look.
There's also silos within organizations, and when Elizabeth steps into the room as one of the people driving strategy, you have a different type of relationship.
I think it kind of has to be a partnership. As the if you are a strategy person, and that was kind of my only experience in corporate strategy, but you're bringing to the table an outside in perspective, and you're bringing, hopefully that's informed by things you may hear from, ideally from customers or from the market. So you've got a little bit of feedback, if you like, to give the business, but the business also has its own perspective on how they can run and what they should be doing. And, you're only going to get traction if you have consensus on a path forward using those two inputs.
So you do begin to think like an operator at some point, or have your eye on, maybe I'd like to try the operations side. I know that's where a lot of your peers probably pursue that path as well. But can you tell us how that began to sort of come to mind and build?
Yeah, and actually that phase in Goldman at strategy was that idea kind of came to me towards the end of my time at banking. I had kind of obviously a decade in investment banking. I was advising companies on things they should do, things they shouldn't do, and I watched what a lot of my customers and clients were going through, and I thought, well, that would be interesting. That could be interesting to try. And I could tell that there was a lot more that they were working on rather than just the deals, the M&A that the bankers kind of got involved with. And I started wondering about the parts of the page that I didn't see. Running a business, and as you do M&A, you see some deals succeed over time, and some deals never quite achieve what they had targeted on paper. And you realize it's much more about the execution and the management and the strategy and evolution of that strategy in real time than it is necessarily about the deal terms or the price. So I was interested in that side of things, and then this opportunity to move into strategy was a first chance of, let me try that. Let me learn a little bit more about that. And then after I'd been doing that for about a year, which was a pretty short time, I had outreach, and I had the opportunity to go to a company that had formerly been a client, which was S&P Global. And that was kind of the third phase, if you like, of my career experiences that really cemented. Well, first of all, it confirmed, yes, this is really fun. Like the finance role in corporate is really fun and can really help build and drive a business. And so in my time at S&P, I spent first about a year and a half in a corporate finance role, covered treasury and tax and capital allocation. And then I had the opportunity to go to a divisional CFO role. And that was the first time I was part of a leadership team, helping to run a business. I had the finance role, and I got to work with my peers on the leadership team to drive the business. And I thought, this is great. This is so fun to be able to enable this organization to do the things that it wanted to do.
when you do step into your next into the CFO office at Verisk, and we'll talk about Verisk in a moment. Was it a networking contact, or was it a recruiter who finally helps you step into a CFO?
Yeah, I wasn't looking to leave. I was having a great time at S&P in the ratings business, so I was not in touch with recruiters myself. There was some outreach to me from the industry.
Were there acquisitions you were involved in there, or what was where did your involvement head with them?
Yeah, there were acquisitions. So S&P Global. So I was at S&P from 2019 through 22. So kind of 3.5 years. Obviously, that was the COVID disruption happened during that period.
Yeah.
But yes, acquisitions. There were several, but most notable, they acquired IHS Markit. That was signed at the very end of 2020 and closed at the very beginning of 2022. And that was a $44 billion acquisition. It was the largest M&A deal that was signed, I think, in the year of 2020. So that was a sizable acquisition for the organization, and significant change came from it.
Wow, no question, that was a big deal. We need to move to our business portion of the interview now. So let me ask you straight out. Tell us about Verisk. What is this company about, and what are its offerings today?
Yeah, great question. So Verisk is a data and analytics and technology provider to the insurance industry. So we support the insurance industry worldwide. The heart of our business is focused on the property and casualty segment of the insurance industry. And our history is pretty important. So we were founded as a consortium of many of the U.S. property and casualty providers in the 1970s. They realized that they needed to share each other's data to better be able to select, price, and underwrite risk, and to process claims more efficiently, and in particular to better identify fraud when there were fraudulent claims in the insurance space. Now, no one insurance carrier has enough data on their own to be able to do those things best. If you think about sort of actuarial assessment of risk, they need the data set across the industry to understand what's going on in their sector or in their particular insurance industry. And if you think especially about fraud claims, so this is interesting. So about 10% of property and casualty insurance claims have some element of fraud attached to them. So it's fairly prevalent in the industry. And the single best predictor of fraud is the previous experience of that claimant, whether it's an individual or a small business. And so if you, as an insurance carrier, want to identify fraud, the best thing you can do is check what else that claimant has filed in the past. You can't do that, obviously, just with your own set of claims. You want to look across the industry, and we enable folks to do that. So very important sort of consortium and network history. And as you can tell, very focused on data and analytics right from the start, way before it was, trendy like it is today. So we started that way in the 70s, owned actually by many of the insurance carriers. It was separated out in the 1990s to be an independent entity and for profit, and eventually went public in 2009. Over that time, the company expanded from the insurance industry to experiment in other end markets for the data and analytics space. But more recently, in 2021 and 2, we divested a bunch of those businesses, and so we are focusing back in the heart of where we started on data and analytics for the insurance industry.
You step in. What is the chapter that you're opening? And I imagine it might have to do with some of these transactions and sharpening the focus as well as making some. But what would you tell us? What is the chapter that you're opening?
Yeah, the chapter that I stepped into about 1.5 years ago now is a super exciting chapter. So yes, as I set up that framework, we have just recently divested a number of businesses in other end markets, and we are focusing on the opportunity for a data and analytics provider in the insurance industry. And it's an incredibly exciting moment in time for that, because if you go back to where I said we started in the 70s, right? It's using data and analytics to price and select risk, process claims efficiently, identify fraud. All of those things are tremendously important for the insurance industry today. The U.S. property and casualty industry has had significant losses, depending on the sector, in 22 and some in 23, whether it's driven particularly on the auto underwriting side, all of the supply chain issues, chip issues, and pricing issues on automobiles all flowed through and impacted the auto insurance industry. And then if you look on the property space, everything from natural catastrophes, some hurricanes, some weather events, as well as, in both cases, the inflation and just underlying prices have all hit the insurance industry pretty hard. So what do they need to do? They need to use the data and analytics to help them adjust their pricing and help them operate more efficiently. That's what we were founded in order to do. But the ways that we can do that in 2024 and the things we can enable for our customers are vastly different from the way we were doing things and they were doing things previously. So the opportunity for us is to use much better data sets, to use much more efficient operating systems and workflows to enable our customers to return to profitability.
And how is Verisk gaining those capabilities to offer them to its clients? I mean, have there been acquisitions in the data area or some of the sophisticated software that's required?
Yeah, so there have been some acquisitions. Some of those have been recent. Some of those have been businesses that we've acquired over our history that really have incremental skills and incremental data that can be used here. Now, we have, but a lot of it. So number one, yes, there's been new acquisitions of new data sets, but also there's much better operation of and use of existing data sets. So Verisk has, petabytes worth of data from our customers that we use. That data, used to exist in a proprietary database that, like many others, was on premise. Over 5 years ago, we started migrating that to the cloud. And just last year, we completed that migration. All of our data now sits in the cloud, and we switched off the mainframe, which was a big moment of celebration. And now that the data is sitting in the cloud, what had been previously somewhat siloed data sets can now be brought together so that there's much more product integration, there's much more seamless use of data across different use cases and across what had been somewhat siloed businesses.
So tell us a little bit then about your lines of sight into the business today. And usually we ask for your top of mind metrics here. What are the numbers you're always looking at before your first cup of coffee? What would you share with us?
Yeah, I mean, we focus on our P&L. We focus on our revenue and expenses. The good news is our business is 80% based on subscription. So we have a very stable, very high visibility business. So that's very helpful because I don't, wake up every morning going, where's the revenue going to come from? It enables us to think much more about new products, new subscriptions. And most importantly, right now, I think we're taking a customer-centric perspective. So where previously we might have been focused a little bit product by product and approaching the same customer, potentially approaching a large insurance carrier with a number of different products. Now we're taking a perspective much more of what is that customer experiencing? What do they need from us? And so we're bringing things much more together in that way.
And is this over the last 2 years or since your arrival, I guess?
Since my arrival. So my predecessor as CFO, Lee Shavel, stepped into the CEO seat a few months before my arrival. I was his backfill, if you like, as CFO. So he is a former banker like me. And I think both of us have this customer facing mindset. And so that's an initiative that he really brought into the organization.
So when we do speak to sort of customer-centric finance leaders, they often talk about customer success and how they have a customer success organization. P&A people are perhaps along the front lines trying to understand better the customer relationships and helping sort of monitor or measure how successful they are. What would you tell us? I mean, what is your team up to when it comes to the customer experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. We track those metrics. We focus on it. We have a very high retention rate, so that's something that we continue to monitor and engage with. We track our NPS score, which is also very high for companies in our industry. There's definitely room to improve. I would say we've been looking a little bit. I talked a little bit about our somewhat siloed organization in terms of our different products, even within the insurance industry. And so one of the things from a customer standpoint we've been working on doing is bringing together that go-to-market a little bit. So we have a group at the center that focuses on the top 20 customers or so. We're looking at expanding that group's effort so they can really bring together from the experience of the customer the full kind of one Verisk product set.
Does the calculation for lifetime customer value, is that something always top of mind? Because I'm curious if you have changed the calculation there on your tour of duty. You decided to look at the world a little differently, and maybe that's calculated a little differently. Anything?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have not historically looked at lifetime customer value very much. I suspect our lifetime customer values would be off the charts. And the reason for that is, again, we have a very long-standing relationship with our large customers. So when we talk about customer acquisition, it's usually expanding a wallet share or going into some greenfield areas that we're working on, like life insurance or internationally. But if you look at our core business, I would say our customer acquisition cost was a long time ago. And small relative to the value.
So, curious about, again, your tenure and whether there's a particular metric or business dynamic that you realized the organization need to be paying attention to more closely, and how you went about that, whether it was measuring something. Maybe there was already a metric in place, but it just wasn't getting the attention it deserved.
Can I take that in a slightly different direction? And it's not.
Our guests always do.
Okay, so yeah. I will take that in a slightly different direction. It's not that there's one metric that we've been focused on tracking, but I can't believe I've gotten this far into the conversation without mentioning a finance transformation. That was the thing that we had to do when I came, and that was one of the big things that took up my time last year, and that's been part of what we've been launching. So when I arrived here, our general ledger system was on an old version of PeopleSoft, and we are upgrading to the cloud-based version of Oracle. And organizing ourselves around that has been a key enabling step for the organization, one that has taken and will take for the next year or so quite a bit of work. But once we do that and get our foundations right, then absolutely, then I am excited at looking at what metrics and KPIs that enables us to access that we haven't been able to before because we were limited by our systems.
Just how to rally your team around that type of transformation. Can you describe? I don't know. Was there a core team that you appointed, or is it done differently? Is there your controller, of course, that have to be on board? What would you share with us?
Yeah, at this point, our transformation is touching most of the organization. Our controller definitely has been, front and center of it, and has been lead, and was probably the initial instigator of the fact that we needed to change and we needed to make what is going to be a significant investment in order to change, although we expect to benefit from that in terms of efficiencies going forward. So we absolutely, he kind of got us to see that we need to make this change and commit to making this change. And then we've built out the project team. It's now needed to be a bigger project team, and we've pulled people on board as well. I also, when I joined Verisk, and this transformation had been approved in concept as something that we needed to do, but we hadn't really started. We'd been focusing on the divestitures of other businesses that I mentioned. So once we got those divestitures behind us, it was time to start on this transformation. Now, when I was interviewing with Lee, now my CEO, about joining, I did say, I am not myself a finance systems expert. If what you want is somebody to go deep and really own this project with a lot of hands-on experience, I'm not sure I'm the right person. I ended up here anyway, so I guess he figured I could handle it. But I hired, so after evaluating for a while our team, and we have a great team who knows a lot about where we want to get to and knows where all the bodies are buried in our current system. But none of us have been through this in a ton of detail. So I hired someone who's now our head of finance transformation, who has implemented, I think, 7 different Oracle implementations over the years, and is an expert in this, and has brought in phenomenal experience in telling us what can or can't be done.
Great, thank you for that. Wondering about AI. Every finance leader, of course, you're having conversations informally and perhaps formally about how it's going to impact the business, what's going to change. When you think about AI, what can you share some of your concerns or some of the extra value you think it'll bring?
Yeah, for AI, for finance in particular, I'm excited about it, but we need to get our underlying data and infrastructure in a place where we can take advantage of it first. So I view this finance transformation that we're going through as the first step before we can then see how we can further benefit in an AI-based way. From the business itself, from Verisk overall, and we have a lot of opportunities with AI. So we've been working with AI and machine learning, kind of version 1.0 or whatever you want to call it, but all the AI and data that existed before the advent of generative AI and large language models. That has been a part of our product development and our products for some time. We're also engaged now with generative AI and large language models, doing some pilots, assessing the use cases, and doing some work with our customers to figure out where we want to invest more in product development. But yes, I will say, Verisk is, as a data-first company, and given the amount of data that we hold in-house and the amount of our customers' data, we are very, very mindful of the issues necessary in AI, and mindful of doing it in a secure way and in a faithful way to the original data and the original kind of use cases. So for example, we have blocked all kind of all use of public AI tools. We can't have an employee from our system just go on to ChatGPT and ask them to, write me a script or whatever. We have now licensed private versions of the various tools that sit securely on our machines.
Yeah, interesting times.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. We're now up to what we refer to as our finance strategic moment question. And we're really looking for just one moment of insight that you've experienced along the way that would reveal how finance plays a strategic role in business. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, I think the finance strategic moment that I had was the learning I had back when I was at S&P Global. And my first shift, and this was in late 22, when I moved from the corporate finance role into the divisional CFO role of the rating seat. So it was my first time being a CFO for a business, and divisional, whole business, doesn't matter. First time there on the leadership team with a business and working with a a president of the division. And the president I was working for was a guy named John Beresford. And John, before running the ratings business, had actually been the CHRO, the head of HR for S&P Global, and previously an HR executive at other great companies like Pepsi. And that interaction was kind of my finance strategic moment, because for my first months in that business, I always came from things. I had my technical background, I had my banking background, investor mindset, kind of corporate finance. And so I tended to come at things functionally in terms of the numbers, in terms of the strategy, in terms of the results we were looking to achieve. And John, in running that business with his experience in HR, came at things in terms of people. And so I would ask, what are the results? What's the multi-year plan? What are we trying to achieve? But he would say, who's on your team to achieve this, and how are they incentivized? What is the structure you've set up for them to do it? And that was a fascinating mindset for me, because it hadn't been as deeply ingrained in my thinking until I saw John think it through. And it made us a very good team, because I think you really need both of those elements and both of those ways of thinking. But I continue to go back to that learning today when I'm either helping the business support a large investment project, or even owning my own projects like this finance ERP transformation that we talked about earlier. The questions, I start with my finance questions, which are what's your budget, what's your plan, what are the results you're going to achieve. But I also, in the back of my mind, keep in there, but what is the team? Have you set them up for success? What are the tools that they need? What are the people that you need? And the businesses in the industry that I've been in have been ones where people are the primary expense that we manage in terms of budgets. Our headcount is the biggest line on our P&L. And so when you think about capital allocation, it's really a question of human resources allocation. And so I very much have learned that finance and HR need to be joined at the hip, and you need to think about the financial results, but also the people that are going to deliver the plan that you're trying to achieve.
37,025-1. These are the three numbers to remember to get the visibility and control you need to make the right business decisions instantly. 37,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down expenses. 1. Because your business is one of a kind, you should get a customized solution for all of your KPIs in one efficient system and with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need, all in one place. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance, absolutely free, at netsuite.com/KPI. That's netsuite.com/KPI. We're going to jump to what we refer to as our mentoring round, where I'll ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. We're wondering about your first 30 days in this role. We always like to have you go back in time again for us one last time here. And think about that first 30 days. If there's something you would tell yourself, there was something you probably knew quite a bit, but there was something you wish you knew at that place in time, what would that be?
I think it would be, so I knew enough to know that the most important thing in those first 30 days is to meet the people. As I said in the strategic story, it's all about the people and the relationships to get you there. So I knew that I had to do that. I think what I would tell myself looking back is, you can try to learn about the business. That's also the most important thing. but you're never going to learn everything in those first 30 days. And so have a first pass at it, but literally tell yourself and tell the people that you're meeting that I'm going to come back in 6 months. And I'm sorry, but we might repeat this exact conversation 6 months from now, but it's I'm going to understand it better or in a different way in 6 months. So I think it's knowing that your learning is very important at the beginning, but it will continue to deepen over time.
Yeah. Nice insight there for us. Thank you. We're curious. We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side for us. We're wondering, what is something that maybe many of your colleagues might not know about you, something generally just not known about you? Anything you'd share with us?
Look, anyone who knows me already knows that I have kids because I talk about them constantly. My kids who are 7, 11, and 13 now. But if you ask me about something on the personal side, I have to start there. And I think, look, I just said my oldest just turned 13, so I have a teenager in the house. I will have a teenager in the house for a long time to come. I think being a parent of a teenager has a lot in common with being a CFO, because you have to get very comfortable with the fact that you are making decisions, almost on a fiduciary basis. You're making decisions for somebody in the case of the teenager or a group in the case of the business. They may not like them at the time, but you have to make decisions that you think are going to be the best in the long run, even if it causes a painful conversation at the moment. And the other thing you have to know as both a CFO and a parent to a teenager is, you will make mistakes and your audience will be merciless on you when you make mistakes. And that's okay. You have to get comfortable with that and sit in that seat nonetheless.
That's great. Thank you for that. We wonder if you have a book recommendation for us. It doesn't have to be a business book. Maybe it's something you escape with, just something that you found interesting. Anything?
I have two great books. So first of all, I love reading, and I would recommend to anyone in finance to spend as much time reading as they can and exercise that part of their brain. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, who's seen as kind of one of the fathers of behavioral economics. But that was a really foundational book for me in terms of thinking about how individuals make decisions and kind of how the human brain has evolved to make decisions. That really helped me think about, I even sometimes think about that when I'm presenting a decision to the board in terms of thinking of how they might respond to it. So that was a fascinating book. My husband heard me talk about that book for probably 6 months or a year after I read it. I was constantly pulling out anecdotes. Another great one is called The Price of Peace, which was a biography of John Maynard Keynes, which was a fabulous book. It was it is both a history of macroeconomics and his work, but also a fascinating biography of an interesting individual.
Just one last personal question. As a mathematician, do you still think like a mathematician? How does a mathematician think? What is the imprint that's on you from those years of studying that you had?
That's a great question. I think that out of it, I try to extract a little bit. So mathematics is about seeing an individual problem and then trying to extract it to the general case. And what does this tell me what are the patterns I see here? And what can this tell me about the next pattern? So I think I keep that mindset a little bit when I see a question or a calculation. I try to think about what does it mean more broadly, and are there any wider lessons to draw from it?
Interesting. I'm glad we asked. We are up to our last question, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. And we're wondering about the next 12 months and what your priorities are as CFO. What would those be?
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I mentioned our finance transformation. So I am super excited about us continuing on that path and getting us close to a place in the next 12 months where we can really start to develop and deliver the value from that. We can take finance to a place that I think the organization hasn't seen before in terms of how much we can contribute to the business. So that's one. On the Verisk side overall, I'm excited about us continuing to deliver on our plans. Our growth plans, we've been expanding margins and we will continue to do that. So we are both becoming more efficient And we're also investing in the business in some of the areas that I talked about before. So I think you'll see us really move along the path on that customer-centric organization and on that, delivering data and technology solutions to our customers. So I think those are the two areas.
Elizabeth Mann, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. We hope 2024 is treating you well. If you haven't already, we hope you'll pay a visit to CFOThoughtLeader.com and go ahead and subscribe to our Mentoring Round newsletter, where we highlight the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our recent CFO guests. Also, LinkedIn users, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.